All right, so a few days ago, 4 days ago actually, I took a trip through some alternate universes, and the reason I went to these alternate universes, because it is a lot of trouble to find one. You gotta first you gotta find like a Stargate, and then you gotta find a solar flare or wormhole or something. But the thing is, they don't make Tab Cola anymore. At the Coca-Cola company, they stopped producing Tab to focus on their more popular product lines. And so I was looking for a universe where they still made tabs so I could buy some. It's a lot easier than time travel actually, because time travel you gotta like make all these precautions, but the alternate universe you could just buy some, go there, buy some tab, and then come back. Anyway, when I was going through these different universes, these different realities, I found one where uh, Disney was having some success with their Disney Channel cartoon, The Owl House, same as they do here, but they got approached by Intelligent Systems, a Japanese video game developer, who here is known for mostly for making the Fire Emblem series of strategy RPGs. In this alternate reality, the Fire Emblem series was not being quite as successful as it is here, but they still wanted to make games like that, so they reached out to Disney and to some other studios to see, maybe they could use a licensed property and then put it in this framework. And so yeah, I had the chance to play the first few chapters of it was called Fire Emblem: The Owl House, game number 4 actually in the series that they're making. I only got to play the first few chapters. It turns out that the Nintendo Switch in that reality runs on x86 instead of ARM, so it didn't work in my Switch when I brought it back here. But I figured I'd just give you a taste for it by ranking the characters based on how they are, in those initial parts of the game. And keep in mind, I'm including all the DLC characters here, characters you can bring over from other games, and you'll see when I get there. But it's pretty clear that the game was balanced around its original characters, not the DLC ones, because some are just either really good or just not very good at all in the context of the chapters this game gives you. It is very linear. It's they really designed it with the idea of having certain characters with certain abilities available, which gives them more freedom in designing intriguing maps. But the contrast to that is you kind of use certain characters. It's not like Binding Blade, where you can just use all sorts of different characters, or FE1. What I'm trying to say is that the cast isn't large. It's a fairly limited cast. Obviously, well, anyway, let's get on with the rankings. So the Lord in this game, the Lord equivalent is Luz, of course, because Luz is the main character. It's hard to rank a main character because that's someone you always have to deploy, but honestly, for like the Lord, Fire Emblem series have a reputation of like the Lord maybe not being a very good character, especially see like with Roy you have to protect Roy a lot. Lynn and Erica have lots of speed, but they're kind of fragile. But Luz actually does pretty well, and it's a combination of, well, she starts out with pretty low stats in the early game, but you can tell by the way her growths are. And I know usually like bases are more important than growths, but for a forced deployed character, we have to have them the whole game anyway. Their training kind of plays into it because you have to train them. And her growths are really good. What's interesting about Luz as a unit is she attacks with magic instead of strength as a stat, but she doesn't actually have any rank in any magic types. She doesn't have like a lightning rank or wind or anything like that. But she basically always uses what's the equivalent of this, I think it's called Spectre cards in Radiant Dawn, and there are all sorts of those, and that's what Luz uses for all her attacks. And ultimately, it seems like a change they made mostly for story reasons. It ends up just being kind of like tomes, except only Luz can use them, but they also have like way more uses, honestly, than tomes do. So you can stuff a lot of them in her inventory, not really care about it. The thing is, her growths are so good that it's kind of almost like Marth in Shadow Dragon and the Blade of Light, where he just becomes a powerhouse, eventually through the game. I think that's the way Luz would go if I kept training her. I'm not going to put her all the way in S rank because she does need to be protected, at the start of the game. But she really seems like a character that could, if you just keep playing kind of solo the whole game for you, starting, maybe early mid game, you could probably just put everything into her. And so the games, the Fire Emblem games usually give you like a early paladin. This game gives you Eda, who I don't know, I think I'm gonna throw her in C because it's not because she's not mounted. This game doesn't really do mounted units. Kind of everyone's on foot, which is really interesting for a Fire Emblem game. But the deal with Eda is she's really powerful. At first, she's like incredibly powerful, and then there's a story event, which instead of her her kind of gradually declining as the game goes on, which kind of usually enemies get better, this character stays the same. Well, the enemies and your other units are getting better, but Eda actually has some negative stat movement at a certain point. I don't want to go too far to spoil it, but it doesn't mean she's not useful after that. Like, you shouldn't stop deploying her just because her stats go down, as long as you have a deployment slot open where you feel like she'd do better than your other units. There are limited deployment slots in this game, but also limited units, honestly. If you're doing a run where you're just using all house characters, then I think of course you would want to probably keep her till endgame, honestly. Like, the stat drop, she starts out with such high stats that the drops don't impact the gameplay quite as much as you think they would. King is, I don't know if he has potential later on in the game. I only played the first few chapters before I had to come back to my own realm of reality, but he didn't do a whole lot. He didn't have very good stats. So his class is it's the Demon King class from Fire Emblem: The Sacred Stones, but the difference is he has like negative personal stats. He just really low, almost everything. Avoid is great. He's good skill. He can dodge tank to some extent, but he is someone you'll need to try to keep out of harm's way. But the reason I think that he would eventually grow into such a good unit is he has so many story events with Eda and with Luz that I have to imagine he must have some story lock promotion or something. Or at the very least, he might be one of those characters, now they think about it, that if they die in the game, they don't actually die in the story, and they just keep having the story scenes. Like, trying to think of a good example. I know Fire Emblem Blazing Blade has a lot, just because a lot of those characters it's a prequel, have to survive, but there are other games too where the characters don't actually die. Lara Shell and Sacred Stone's another example, and I think King might be somewhere along those lines where he's story important, but as far as gameplay goes, he's just kind of like a unit like Sophia, where they're just kind of bad and they're there because sometimes raising a bad unit is fun, right? And King is a character, design-wise, dialogue-wise, is nothing if not fun. But yeah, I'm just kind of sorry to put him in E rank, but I can't really put anyone in F rank because in this game, just because the roster is so small that everyone has at least something, some utility. There's no one who can really just flat out get placed for the most part. So should probably, Hooty is a difficult character to categorize, and this is why tier lists can be so hard sometimes, because I think I'm gonna move Eda up to B and put Hooty in C, because Hooty will kind of just destroy really powerful units on maps. If you're not worried about turn count, then any map that Hooty is in, you can just have Hooty do the whole thing, but the deployment, the availability is very limited. There's only a couple maps that are actually at the owl house, like at the actual house. Those are the only ones he's available as a unit in. And so usually if you're trying to play efficiently, you use him to take out the strongest enemies, and then have the rest of your characters go after the weaker ones. And really going for a low turn count is the only reason chapters like that have a whole lot of appeal to them, because if you're just trying to cheese it with Hooty, then there's really nothing you have to do except keep the other characters from dying. It's not much of a challenge. But I think those were just in there to kind of give an extra challenge to players who wanted to go that route. I mean, it's kind of like Kirby games. You could just fly over the whole thing with Kirby if you wanted to, right? But people don't, because that's not fun. The only, outside those four, the only character I'd recruited by the time I had to come home was Willow. Where's Willow? Here she is. And yeah, I'm gonna put her in B. She's good. She's a solid unit. Her combat isn't anything too special, but you know, she's pretty tanky. She's not gonna die from you to like just random enemies, and she's got a neat skill where she can only use it. She can't use it on every turn, right? But it's almost the same thing as Greenfinger in Wargroove, where you know, Greenfinger, they can make some vines grow on the map, making areas basically impassable for either the red or blue sides until those vines get knocked down. They're treated like units that you can attack, and that's what she can do. It takes it's a lot easier to use a skill like that on a Fire Emblem map as opposed to like something like Wargroove maps. The map design is just so different, and in a Fire Emblem game, there are just so many choke points that you can just put one on, and the AI just doesn't know how to deal with them. So honestly, and I should mention, this game has a versus mode, and you know, if I'm ranking only for the one player here, just because of how she can kind of fool the AI like that, she's probably S ranked just for that. And in multiplayer, she'd probably be C, and Hooty would be F. You can't even use him in multiplayer. But yeah, the AI really wasn't designed around that. That might actually be something they patch in a future release, because it seems like, honestly, it seems like a bug. So here's the deal. Since the person Switch I was playing this on, his YouTube name was also Liberty Ernie, but otherwise it was just a complete coincidence. They're actually different people. But he lent me his Switch, and it already had these other Fire Emblem games on it, so you could use the characters from them. And the first one, actually, there's actually a special story event that happens if you recruit her, is Maddie, Maddie Flower. Where should I put her? Probably, yep, that's probably the right place. So you know, from character-wise, this is the kind of character that would be like probably a druid or shaman. I think shaman promotes to druid. I don't remember which way it is, but you know, the thing though, this game doesn't have dark magic as a type, so instead they made Maddie like a staff user basically, except they're not called stabs in this game. They're called like spells or curses or I forget what. But essentially, it's like most of her turns are going to be healing people, or like if she has like berserk or sleep. Those are actually things you get pretty early on in this game. There's a limited amount, but you get them early. So she's either casting those or healing people. Lots of healing, really. Yeah, this game uses more of like a fire, wind, thunder magic triangle, and you'll see that in the witches in the main game. But then Maddie's kind of an early extra healer you get for your team besides what Eda can do. The thing though, the reason that you know Maddie's also in B rank, even though she can't attack like Eda can, is she's got a skill called Juggle, so you go up to a square, and let's say whatever allied units are adjacent to that square she goes up to, she can rotate them either 90, 180, or 270 degrees, rotate them collectively as a unit, the 4 units surrounding her, as long as the places they end up in are not occupied by an enemy or like a wall or something. So it's a kind of like a really fancy version of repositioning. Pretty useful once you figure out how to use it, because there's not really anything else like reposition in this game. So yeah, there's basically between the healing, utility, and the juggle. I mean, healers are just good anyway, and juggle doesn't give you experience. So if she doesn't have anyone to reposition, just have her heal. She'll build up enough experience. I should mention that she has a pretty decent promotion, but it comes so late in the game. She's the only frog in the game, and there's a frog specific promotion item she has to use that you get automatically, but comes so late. It's hardly worth really considering her promotion. She gets access to tomes at that point, but there's really no reason for her not to just keep using stats exclusively, because you'll have more than enough magic users by this point. Most of the game is magic users, so the promotion is nice to give her some additional stats, but it's not going to change how you use her. This is kind of an interesting character they put in us. Gloria, I think her name is, and so basically she only appears in certain chapters, kind of like Hooty, but every chapter she's in, she's a different class. Her stats don't carry over, so it's basically like a one chapter. She has like 5 different units, honestly. She's like Orson in Sacred Stones, or Athos and Blazing Sword, but it's like different. I kind of had, if I was able to put different images in to distinguish them, it's the same picture every time, but it's different stats every time, and just a kind of gameplay wise a different unit. I guess the story is that she got like the place she worked shut down, and now she's trying out different jobs, and so that's why she changes units on every map. It's kind of clever how they work that in there. But ultimately, because you can't really train her, your own units are probably going to outclass whatever her stats are, as long as you're not spreading the EXP too thin. Let's see who's next. So Enid is actually a surprisingly good unit. So what happens with Enid is she's a physical attacking unit, which is good in the game where a lot of people have high res and low defense. You don't get a lot of physical units, and the ones you get, it's kind of the inverse of like the typical Fire Emblem situation where you go off after a big boss with your magic guys because the boss is low res. Here it's the other way around. Like bosses have low defense, you try to find physical users to attack them. But the thing about Enid, as opposed to like all the other physical weapon users you can get access to, mostly through the previous games or the DLC, is she can actually get deployed to the witch specific maps that takes place inside Hexside. And that's true even if you don't reclass her to witch, because she can be reclassed to witch and she has kind of that ability. She can get deployed to the maps regardless, and that's not true of like Gloria or even King can't get deployed to those maps. So that's really what gives her your utility. I wouldn't recommend reclassing her to witch. I would keep her ninja. Ninja's, I think, by far the best class for her. It's just got really good speed, decent defense, not a whole lot of downside to it. There's not much to say about Susie. Susie's ultimately just a lot like the other witches in the game, essentially like a pre-promote, right? Kind of the already promoted class of witch, but not quite as strong as the other promoted units you'll end up with. So if she might show up in mid-game if you get her. She'll show up like mid-game. She'll be useful for a while, but eventually you drop her. Maybe like early mid-game. It's kind of hard to describe. But she's useful. While you have her, you might as well use her just until it doesn't make sense to use her anymore. And make sure to recruit her, though, if only for the dialogue. Just such the most grumpy and annoyed character I've ever seen. Just the kind of person you love seeing, like, just how the other characters annoy them. Like, but, this ranking is just based on gameplay, so. Uh, Now, Pearl is, for reasons a lot like Enid, Pearl is a good character to use. I wouldn't put her as high as Enid, but maybe low B tier. No, high C tier maybe. Yeah, right, right above Hooty probably. So Pearl uses spears and lances. Is an infantry unit with spears, because again, this game doesn't have mounted units like traditional Fire Emblem games, but it's got a really good infantry unit here who actually comes with this 1/2 range spear and can use any lance basically in the game. And kind of low defense and resistance, but the HP kind of starts making up for it. Go to HP growths. Really good speed. I don't know if anyone's ever going to double her. So she should be okay. Good movement too. Kind of like imagine if you got Amelia in Sacred Stones and then promoted her to like from recruit to recruit again and then to recruit again and just like made it really good. That's kind of how, maybe not, Pearl isn't quite that strong unless you really devote the same EXP to her that you would have to devote to Amelia. But she's a good unit. It doesn't mean you have to buy the Steven Universe Fire Emblem in order to unlock her, of course. But yeah, I'm trying to rank all the characters I've experienced with, and I borrowed Alternate Liberty Ernie's Switch, and these are the ones he had. There's just a couple left. Amethyst is, see, I don't know. I don't think I'd put Amethyst as high as Pearl. Definitely above Susie though. Amethyst is more like a fighter kind of character. She doesn't have a promotion, which is interesting. Like I'd say, like maybe like Barst is a good comparison. She got some good physical attacks, good speed eventually. Well, maybe not good speed, like passable speed, where she's not getting doubled by people. She's doubling the weaker enemies pretty quickly. The real reason you might want to deploy Pearl and Amethyst together though, and I think this contributes to both of them maybe being ranked a little higher than they would have otherwise, is because if you can build up supports between them, then you'll be able to they can fuse together into a single unit called Opal, and it works a lot like Pair Up in Awakening, except that instead of one character kind of being carried by another character, it's visually that it becomes one character with like kind of some of the appearance and attributes of both, as well as gaining bow rank, which can be useful for maps with flyers. There are not a lot of bow users in the game, so just even if you only bring Opal out for like the maps where you need a bow, because it is one less unit, right? But there's a stat boost to it, and yeah, that might be something you want to use at least for those circumstances, just to make the maps go a little quicker. And the fusion mechanic is unique to these two Steven Universe characters. There's no one else in this game who can use that mechanic. So that might be a neat thing to try in some of your playthroughs. The last character I got right before I had to travel back to my own reality, my own plane, was Mao Mao. And Mao Mao is same thing that's said about like Pearl and Amethyst being physical attackers applies even more so to Mao Mao. And really, I'd put him right up there with Enid. And the reason is, I mean, it's not like he can't be deployed to certain maps like Enid can. He's pretty much a straightforward Myrmidon character that, like you see in most Fire Emblem games. Like it's like that. He starts as an enemy. He has a killing edge equipped, and kind of what you get. But in this game, that is really, really useful to have. To have a sword unit to kind of take out some of the magic users who are hard to use magic attacks against. And I should also mention there are a lot of fog maps in this game. Mao Mao comes with a personal weapon, a basically infinite use sword called Geraldine. It's got little might, but it has a brave effect. And the important thing is, though, instead of using it as a weapon, you can also use it as a torch. If you just go to the items menu, select Geraldine to use it as an item, and it'll use it just like a torch. And because of infinite uses, Mao Mao is basically like an infinite torch user. He can just, any turn he's not attacking, he can just do the torch thing and light up the area. So, I mean, just on desert maps alone, that's really useful. Now, I wouldn't, there is, like I said, with the frog promotion item from Maddie, there's also a cat promotion item you get. There's only one you can get in the game without transferring data from another game. I would, if you're using Susie, I would use the promotion on Susie to promote her to like tier 3, even though it only gives like tier 2 stats. The promotion doesn't really give much to Mao Mao. It mostly just gives speed, and he already has enough speed to double everyone. Whereas Susie at least can benefit from the stat boost to be useful a little while longer. But if you get Mao Mao, I would definitely use him to basically attack mages. Hopefully, just make sure he doesn't get hit by too many attacks. His res is not that great, you know. You kind of have to protect him a little, rescue drop him maybe, but I try to keep Mao Mao alive just for the infinite torch utility alone. Geraldine might be one of the most convenient personal weapons in any Fire Emblem game, both just because of its item effect and the availability of it. You know, it's like Roy's Binding Blade could heal 30 HP, but you only got it for a few chapters. This you get from the point you recruit Mao Mao. His recruitment, by the way, you can actually recruit him with literally any character. Just start a talk conversation with him. He'll start talking to you. He'll get interrupted by Badger Clops. They'll get into this argument about how Badger Clops isn't even a playable unit, and then they'll just get distracted, and then eventually he'll just join you. So seriously, just send anyone up to him on player phase. Just make sure he doesn't come up to you in enemy phase, and yeah, you just need someone with higher movement than he's got. Probably the easiest Myrmidon to recruit. One of the most useful. Not quite as useful as Wrecker. I mean, it's hard to be as good as Wrecker. They named the university after him, but Mao Mao's up there in the context of this game. So that's my review. I know it's not the complete game because the complete game doesn't exist in this reality, but the parts that do, if they ever port the game, if we ever discover interdimensional travel, I hope maybe someone will pull up this video and this could help you. Yeah, if any of you travel to alternate universes, let me know what you think in the comments by coming back to this universe and posting in this universe's YouTube's comment section, or by stringing an Ethernet cable through the Stargate and doing it that way. So yeah, thanks for watching.